How to make your triggers work for you. Welcome back to the Path to Purpose podcast with Dr. Katja Rusanen. In today's episode, we are exploring emotional triggers and discovering how you can make them work for you so that you can live your purpose. I'm excited to introduce our guest, Jen Cabot, who serves internationally as a renowned psychic medium, spiritual coach, and Reiki master teacher. She passionately supports her clients in resolving their past without reliving their stories, so they can once and for all claim their sensuality, wealth, and power. Welcome, Jen. I'm super excited to have you here.
Hi, I'm super excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Of course. And we just had a little pre-chat about our experience because we were study buddies at the
Hmm.
University of Santa Monica. And that was an maybe in one way a start of our journey to
Sure.
do the work that we do now. But I know often there is something that got you in this path in the first place. So can you
Mm,
share, was there an event that led you to do what you do today?
yeah, this is such a beautiful question, and I feel like it's a little loaded, so I have to go back a little. I have to dip into that energy, right? Um, so for me, University of Santa Monica was definitely like my gateway into a lot of this work. And really what kind of got me into that space was that I just felt emotionally dead. I felt flatlined in my life. I felt overwhelmed. I felt super anxious and stressed. Like I just always had this angst inside of me. So I just didn't feel well. And through a series of catalysts, I actually catapulted because I was a school counselor before I now serve as a spiritual coach and a psychic medium. And I would show up to the school and get a download of information around who was going to be there, what their needs were. But I was like 21, 22. I didn't have any context. I was like, doesn't everybody? So I just carried all of these systems, and then through the catalyst of my former husband's affair, our divorce, I found the University of Santa Monica and realized that through all of these endings in my life, they all served as these really profound catalysts for transformation. And so I kind of at the University of Santa Monica, I hit the ground running. I was like, I want to know more about this death and rebirth cycle, right? Like I just became addicted to being the spiritual scientist. I couldn't get enough of it. So it really led me on this quest of understanding me, like what makes me tick? What is my sensitivity? What is the psychic sort of ability that I got going on? And then I couldn't deny, as many times as I wanted to throw this whole experience up in the air, the universe was like, nope, we're going to realign you, get you back on your path. Um, and so for me, it just became clear that it wasn't just about my healing, it was also about supporting others in really walking with them along their own journey in a way that just gets them to click in, right, to their home, to their center. So it's loaded, it's heavy. That was a Cliff Notes version, but but truly it was through a series of just really traumatic endings that I just kept waking up deeper and deeper and deeper.
And often it is like that. We sometimes have these moments in life that all
Mm,
are taking us forward on our path. And it is
yeah.
really, like my spiritual teacher says, like our willingness that takes us forward and gives us the ability as well to do. And now,
Sure.
today, we will unpack a little bit of these emotional triggers, these triggers that
Yes.
sometimes make us explode. And where do they come from?
Yeah.
What can we do? So that we are all on the same page, can you share a little bit more like what's the anatomy of a trigger? Can you unpack that for us so everybody knows that we are talking about the same thing?
Yeah. 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 No, beautiful. Thank you. So triggers are oftentimes connected to inner kiddos. And when these parts of ourselves start to feel insecure around stepping or changing or leaving our light on, or maybe they're kind of swimming around in unresolved emotional trauma, they often flag triggers like symptoms of depression, anxiety, overwhelm, stress. I have found that in terms of the anatomy, it's never ever the symptom that's the issue. It's like what's going on underneath that's flagging this, right? That's getting us to this space of defensiveness, protectiveness. And so these symptoms of things, again, like stress, anxiety, overwhelm, it's connected to a core wound. And in my work, even with myself personally, but then also in terms of with clients, it's super simple. Well, it's complicated, but it's simple in the sense of like, it's usually a core wound of like deprivation or fear of exposure or fear of abandonment that like our inner kiddos are kind of holding on to. And then they sort of sprout up these symptoms. We just get caught up oftentimes in processing the process and kind of getting stuck in the intellectual experience of like why, how come, why can't I make this sensation? How do I make this stop? But at the whole time, our inner kiddo is like dangling over the cliff's edge, just waiting for us to like come and scoop it. So for me, that's sort of the anatomy there is that the trigger is very often not as it seems. It's always connected to a deeper wound that often springs from there's a need. There's typically an emotional need that's going unmet.
And could you give an example? Like you mentioned a couple of wounds, but whether it's from
Mm,
your own personal life or one of your clients' stories, how this trigger was found, and then how did
mm.
they work on that? Like what was the outcome once you are able to transform the trigger?
Yeah. Okay. This is such a beautiful question. Um, so typically, like when I work with clients specifically, I'm always tuning into the energetics around words that clients are using because these words have weight and it kind of also connects us into these wounds. So, for example, I recently had a client, she she spirals a lot in and out with symptoms of like yo-yoing, where like she's in and then she's out. She wants to put a foot on the gas, she's got the foot on the brake, right? And she's really in this position of launching her own healing practice, but she keeps hitting this glass ceiling, right? And so we could totally focus in on like procrastination, like put some structure around that. But for her, she had this inner divided will. So, in other words, she had a foot on the gas where she was like, I want to do this. I want to show up. I want to serve. I want to be seen as a leader, right? That was her desired outcome. But we really quickly established that she had a foot on the brake. She had this part of herself that was like, yeah, but what if it's too much work? Yeah, but what if I actually don't want to do this? Yeah, but what if I lose myself inside of all of this service, right? And so her core wound was actually deprivation. So she had this part of herself that was actively withholding from what she said she wanted. And so this got really yummy for us because then we started honing in on, so what about depriving herself was she actually loving? Because this part of herself was giving herself like some pretty significant things. It was meeting some pretty significant needs around work-life balance, for example, right? Like her inner kiddo was like, oh my God, we have to give more energy, more light. Like, I don't want to do this. This is going to be exhausting, right? So then she also got to work with like, so what are the boundaries that you got to have with yourself around um like, hey, baby girl, give me all of the lighters because we're going to do this work. But, like, what did she need for rest, for replenishment, for recharge? So that it didn't feel like she was burning out at both ends, with all the hustle. So, that's a very sort of tangible way to work with triggers, and it often leaves you feeling incredibly confident around being able to lead yourself when you can kind of grab that it's not just like, oh, I have to ride the wave of these triggers having their way with me, right? This energy, these emotions, but that I can actually get in there and do the work around like, okay, so it's here. Cool. I love it. Great. What needs is it meeting? And then we get to do the work to change the script around how you're meeting those needs, so that you don't have to go through the symptoms of like yo-yoing and indecisiveness and numbing out. Um, so that's sort of like a recent example of working with someone around triggers and how we kind of drop into the taboo part of it.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so common as well that
Hmm.
the example you shared, like it feels like we have one foot on the accelerator and
Yes,
foot on the brake. And that,
yes,
like I said to my clients, it's a really bumpy ride. Like,
yes, yeah, yeah. Oh, totally. And it leaves you feeling doubtful,
yeah.
right? It leaves you questioning, like, can I do this? Maybe I'm not cut out for it. And it's like, no, 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 no. Um, the way that I often see it, it's like when a client comes to me, they've had maybe 10 plus years of therapy. They've read all the books, right? They're exhausted from processing their process. They just want results. And it's the work is really provocative. It's really taboo because actually we don't want to focus in on your foot on the gas because that can actually lead to escapism.
Mm,
That can lead to cheerleading yourself through the thing. It can lead to even gaslighting yourself where you're like, oh, I'm fine. Like, just get on with it, move through
yeah.
this. Right. But we know the only way out is through,
Yeah.
which means we have to feel it in order to integrate it. And the work, the opportunity is learning how to do it in a way where you feel really safe and comfortable, not comfortable in the sense of like, I feel so good about feeling so bad, right? It's more feeling confident that you've got that you're going to show up for you, that you're going to lead yourself because you're spot on. The exploration, the breakthrough, the ahas is oftentimes in the work around the taboo. So the part of you that has the foot on the brake, the part
Mm.
of you that keeps saying, yeah, but the part of you that's like, I don't think so. And it's kind of giving you the side eye and it's crossing its arms, right? Um, because the part of you that has the foot on the brake, in my experience, is 100% inner kiddo. And so the vision coming in, if you had even if you were like, I really want to work on my money story or I want to work on my love story, right? I'm like, ooh, that's really juicy. And on paper, you're like, yeah, beautiful. We can put together a game plan. Here's some strategies. But if you're not tending to the part of you that has the foot on the brake, that doesn't quite believe, right? Then inevitably there's this part of you that's going to wrap itself around your waist and pull you back. And that's oftentimes where we then start to doubt. We're like, well, maybe I just can't figure this out. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm too broken. Maybe I have too much trauma. Um, so the work, it's so beautiful how precise this work can be around like, let's just get to the core wounds then. Let's talk about again, what is it that you're actually loving about depriving yourself of the career, the love, the move, the whatever that you're loving. Um, and some of my clients are like, but I don't love it. And I'm like, well, yeah, you do because it's here, right? So ego can get a little like, don't get into my business. Um, and it can all this inquiry work can just be done from curiosity.
Mm.
Like you're going to take this part of yourself out to lunch and you're going to be like, all right, sister, you've been here my entire life. These are the reasons I love you. Like really, really neutral. You don't have to unpack the psychology to be like, oh, right. I got it. I'm choosing this. I'm choosing to deprive myself. Um,
Yeah.
So it's yeah, it's really beautiful actually when you dare to look at these more taboo parts of yourself and own it. Like, yeah, I'm doing this thing where like I am doing this push-pull yo-yo sort of experience.
And it takes often the willingness there as well, because it doesn't make sense logically. Like when
Sure.
we start
Right, right.
taking a look, we are like, why would I do that? But
Hmm.
there
Hmm.
is something behind it, and it is because we are very complex.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many layers. Our life, this life, if you believe past lives, all
Yeah.
these layers playing around. So yes, logically, this is something I often say to my clients. It doesn't need to make sense logically right now, but
Mm.
what might be a reason that
Hmm.
is behind it? Because there is also this play that we all have within, is the light and shadow selves.
Hmm.
So, can you open up that a little bit more as well here? Because I think many of
Mm.
us might be like, of course I don't do that. Like, why would I, why in the earth would I do that to myself? Because when we think and take a look up logically, these things often do not make sense. But at the University of Santa Monica as well, they taught us to
Mm.
go deeper, go deeper and see beyond like the what we might
Mm.
logically think. So can you share a little bit
Mm.
more into the light and shadow and how they play within us?
Yeah, so most of us are conditioned to be afraid of the dark, to be afraid of these parts of ourselves that are not as refined, that are a little more expressive, that are bolder, that are bigger, that are that take up a lot of space, right? Most of us. So I'm just going to go on the record and say that probably most of the people that listen to your podcast, your clients, are also sensitive, right? They're also highly empathic, right? Like they're probably most of them are probably intuitives in the closet where they're like, yeah, I feel things all the time, but like the idea of like coming out is really scary. So let me see if I can actually grab this. They want us to also talk about the difference between caretaking and nurturing. So we can drop into that too. But so what I have found is that interfacing, learning how to be with our shadow self is an art. It's a skill because these parts of ourselves, like if you're not careful, you can get burned, right? Because it is intense. It's rich, it's depth, it's dynamic. It's where all of our creative power comes from, is these more taboo bits. And oftentimes in my work with clients too, and even with myself, I had to get really comfortable with the parts of myself that people told me were too ugly. Like that people told me, right? That like that's too much. Go figure out what to do with that and then come back when you're more refined and polished and right. Um, so the shadow self, this isn't about like good and bad or even light and dark as in that. It's really, I just consider again the shadow parts of ourselves to be the more richer. And when I actually tune in, what they keep showing me is that it's not blackout. Imagine these like really gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous deep ribbons of like ebony and deep deep indigo blues and purples. It's a very regal kind of raw energy. It's where we create from. It's our inner sort of roar, and the light side of us is more of this like oracle kind of energy, right? It's the part of us that can make sense from these deeper parts of ourselves. Um, but yeah, it's fascinating to me how conditioned we are to kind of turn away from the shadow. We're like, ooh, nope, nobody can see that. Like I gotta button that right back up.
We feel we need to hide those parts, and it
Yeah.
is often what came for me, like when you were sharing that, it was like in the shadows, there is often our past, and there is
Yeah.
lots of information there too, if we take a look, because those things that we feel that we need to hide, they have
Mm.
also hidden gold. So if we
Hmm.
take a look, we can find it, we can dig deeper and find that like the really accepting us,
Mm.
like who we are, accepting the light, accepting the shadow. And
Mm.
as we are souls having this human experience, so checking in as well, how can we use
Mm.
the shadow
Mm.
parts that they work for us, not against us, but for
Right,
us.
right. Yeah, and this little line just came in, a little reminder, right? That it actually only ever matters that you get you. And so many of us spend so much time trying to explain ourselves, right? And to other people. And it's like it only actually matters that you know how
Yes.
you tick and what you need, right? Like
Love
I
that
don't need to
line.
yeah, right. It's so powerful because it's like, with complete transparency, what's in my shadows is my moodiness, is my depressor. And for so long I denied this part of myself because I didn't know what to do with the intensity of my mood swings because I am a very deep feeler, incredibly deep feeler, and an incredibly deep thinker. And I had people mirroring for me, like, you don't make sense. We don't get you.
Mm.
Which then I was petrified, right? The light side of me was like, oh no, I need to be princess sweet. I need to be buttoned up. I need to be, a little more refined. People are telling me that this depth inside of me is too much. And what I actually learned through doing some of this work around embracing my own taboo bits, my shadow self, was that, these parts of myself actually afford me the bandwidth to hold people in the depths of their pain. Like my capacity to hold a container is out of this world because I really get off on a good death and rebirth. Like I'm just wired that way. And so for me, I'm like, yeah, I get it. It is intense. And right, like I can take care of myself. I can meet my own needs for rest and replenishment and self-care and all of those kinds of things. Um, but yeah, it's really interesting work when we start to dip it. This is kind of like dark feminine stuff when we start to dip into, what are these parts of ourselves that are going unexpressed, and what can we do, right, to better meet also the needs of these part of ourselves.
And you mentioned there the nurturing and caregiving, that was something that was brought forward
Oh yeah,
talk more. So there was the word that was highlighted for me. That's how my guides operate too. Like, oh, that was the thing. We need to talk more. So
yeah.
do you have, and maybe those are also some strategies that how we can make our triggers work for us. So
Mm,
tell us more about the caregiving and nurturing. What
yeah.
what's the message there that they wanted to bring forward?
Yeah, so let's talk about this because again, most of your audience is going to be people who are super sensitive and probably empathic. So, okay, let's do a little Cliff Notes version because this is such a yummy topic. We could go on forever about it. Okay, so many of us have been conditioned to be caretakers. And because we are so sensitive, right, we're kind of wired to serve. We're wired to, I'm going to put this in quotes, to give. We're wired to be there. We're wired to splice in. We're wired to carry because we don't want to see our people in pain, right? We're like, we could let us help you, right? This is the energy. Like, let me help you. And what that actually energetically can translate as is manipulation. And this is actually shadow stuff. And it's not ill intent, like, because I know that word manipulation can feel a little like crunchy, right? It's got some stigma around it. But it is, as someone who is highly sensitive, it can be a guaranteed way of getting your needs for love and connection met by caretaking. So, what this actually looks like energetically is that as a caretaker, you stand in front of someone who's at a point of pain and you say, you know what? Give it to me. I know just what to do with it. And we at that point often feel like we're doing God's work, right? Like I'm helping this person, I'm taking away their pain. But actually, what happens is that we are stripping them the right to the dignity of their process. We have no right to assume that we know what's best for them. And oftentimes, as you know, because you're in this work too, when we're in a point of pain, like we have to, like we're learning, we're growing. Pain is beautiful, actually. It means that we're stretching, right? Um, so nurturing is actually healing the shadow self, really, truly. So the manipulation part. And nurturing is when we get to walk beside our loved ones, our clients, right, who are in a point of pain. And maybe hold their hand and the other one's holding a mirror. And we're like, hey, I see you. You got this. This is painful. And I know you know exactly what you need, right? I know you're resourceful. So the energy shifts into a space of, I'm here to support. What do you need? And so it actually keeps us accountable to our own inner stuff around trying to secure our place in love or trying to get our needs for significance or certainty met by being like running in and being the savior, right? So the caretaking nurturing bit it's pretty big. It does play with this light sort of shadow self stuff too.
Yeah, that was great insights. And it's just seeing these things and seeing our patterns as well is so
Mm,
important for us. And especially when we are on this healing journey, many have
hmm
gone through adversity, have gone through trauma.
hmm
So that is also when sometimes we have these triggers really coming up. And
Yeah.
you have shared a couple of ideas, but do you have some strategies how to make our triggers work for us?
Yes, yes. Thank you so much for asking. So, and this kind of brings me back to our USM roots, but it's like anytime, anytime you don't feel well, it's feedback for you that your school is in session. And so when we are feeling activated, if we can just keep in the back brain this little seed of consideration that 100% of the time, when we are triggered, it's inner kiddo stuff. That kind of softens it a little bit, right? There's a kiddo that's needing TLC. So what often happens is that inner kiddo feels insecure about whatever it is, stepping, showing up, turning the light on, putting in the work, right? Inner kiddos they can just get activated. So we get triggered because the inner kiddo kind of bypasses us as the parent and goes straight up into the critical parent, which is in ego. And the only way that the critical parent knows how to parent is to shut it down. So this is why it can then start to feel like, oh my gosh, like everything is just so loud and congested, right? And all the fear, like everything just gets momentum. So we have to interrupt this pattern with something spiritual and grounding. And it can really truly be just a 90-second process because remember, it's inner kiddo. And in this moment, in the trigger, the kiddo isn't trusting you as the parent to really meet her needs. So interrupting the pattern can be as simple as because you're going to feel that energy probably way before like the intellect gets involved. You're going to feel off, right? You're going to feel anxious. You're going to feel ran down. You're going to feel overwhelmed. As long as you don't ignore that and push it aside, right? Because many of us we ignore, right? We yes, yes. or like whatever. Okay, so this is the visual coming in. Every single time you ignore it, it is literally like you are pushing your inner kiddo over this cliff's edge and she's or he are dangling and they're just like waiting. They're waiting for someone to come and scoop them. So they have to get louder, right? The anxiety has to get bigger. The voice, the doubt has to get bigger. So you can interrupt this pattern actually with this little 90-second process. So this is what I teach my clients. So first, see if you can name it, right? Just the energy, like, whoo, okay, offness is here. You can give it a feeling name. You can call it my depression. I call it my Sour Patch Kid because it's just like ooey gooey and sour, and it just like, right? I'm like, oh, the Sour Patch Kid is back. Um, Step two is that you really orient yourself, maybe even put a hand over wherever that energy is in your body. Check it out. What do you know about this part? Does it have a color? Does it have a size, a shape? Is it heavy? Is it prickly? Sometimes inner kiddos will pop up, like you might be able to see it or feel the energy. Sometimes a memory will come in where you're like, oh, wow, like I remember feeling this way before. Not necessary to kind of do the work. This actually, step two, also supports us in climbing from our intellect and back down into our hearts and in our bodies, which is where we got to do the work anyway, right? And then step three, and this is typically where the breakthrough happens. And then on the other side is where you'll get the oh, right? The ahas. Ask this part, what do you need from me? What can I do to mother you right now while you're feeling insecure? Because, we're going to keep stepping. We're going to do this thing. We have to go to work, right? We're going to do this podcast interview, whatever. Um, so that can be a really gorgeous streamlined process that literally could take like 90 seconds. Um, and it really gets in, it supports you in feeling what you've got to feel and also meeting your needs. So this is what love is, self-love. This is what it is. Having boundaries and then also offering yourself nourishment.
That was so lovely, and that's here. So if you want to go, when you feel triggered, come here and listen to that. Like that was such a beautiful guidance. And you have given us a lot to think about today. And I know you also prepared a gift for the audience. So can you share a little bit about the gift?
Yeah, so I call them psychic soul readings. And so this is where we get to spend time. So as a psychic, I see pathways for clients who are at a point of transition. And during a psychic soul reading, we get to take all the things out of the closets and put it in the living room so that you are armed with powerful, powerful self-knowledge around your lessons, patterns, preferred methods of self-sabotage. You also get channeled inner and outer strategies that you can implement because otherwise, 2 days after the session, you're going to be like, cool, peace out. Like, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, right? The ego is like, that was fun. And then it'll find something else to do. So for your listeners, I'm offering a discount. I think I said like 20% off of the sessions. You'll have the code that you can put into the comments. But yeah, come in whenever for a psychic soul reading and we can really drop in to see what you've got going on that's keeping you feeling like you can't quite turn the page in your healing.
Thank you. And I highly recommend checking that out. The link is in the show notes. So there you find it. Reach out to Jen. And now, as we come to the end, so do you have a special final message that you would like to share?
So you were just so loved. And really, truly, this is a lifelong journey, lifelong. So you really have the time. There's no urgency here. And they just keep saying, you, as in all of you, so loved, so, so, so supported.
Yes, that's very true. And thank you, Jen, for your invaluable insights today and all the work that you do in the world. It's so needed.
Thank you. Thank you.
And
It's great. I'm grateful to be here.
yeah, thank you. And if you enjoyed this interview, please give it thumbs up and subscribe for more. And also check out the previous episodes too. So keep shining your light and sharing your gifts in the world. Sending
Mm.
you lots of light and love. Bye for now.